Well, on this and other stories making headlines on the continent, we can speak via Skype to Africa analyst Aisha Kaji joining us from Morocco, I understand, this morning. Aisha, very good morning to you and thank you for your time. So, troubling developments coming out of Ethiopia with this killing of the general and these other senior officials. Is this the beginning of trouble for Addis?
Well, good morning, Temegile. I think that the long-running troubles of the Amharic people in Ethiopia are not going to be easily resolved. As you've said, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has actually made attempts to begin to resolve these disputes, particularly by releasing political prisoners. But of course, there are always people with other agendas in such a conflict. And the Amharic people, the root cause of the conflict with them has always been over land. And there will be some who will be dissatisfied with Prime Minister Ahmed's attempts to bring about reconciliation and keep Ethiopia whole. So I think that this is the beginning possibly of a longer running civil unrest that we'll continue to see in the months to come, unless, of course, there's a military clampdown, which we hope won't happen, because that will just be incentive for the Amharic people to actually agitate more for independence from Ethiopia or for secession from Ethiopia.
So Abiy Ahmed then, the fairly new Ethiopian leader, when he came in last year, was seen as a huge reformist, as we highlighted the freeing of political prisoners as well, making peace with some of the neighbors. Looking at just his position or his approach to governance, do you think he will be able to quell whatever tensions could come from this situation? Because the last thing Ethiopia can afford now is a return to tension.
Absolutely. And I think that he certainly appears to be sincere in his attempts to resolve the challenges, particularly with the Amharic, but generally in Ethiopia. He's certainly more democratically inclined than any of the previous presidents. And sometimes that inclination towards democracy, while it is great and offers scope for negotiation, often puts leaders in a vulnerable position with their peers, both within their own political movements and with the opposition. And that is something he's going to have to watch out for. My sources in Ethiopia basically tell me that many within his own political alignment, his own political coalition, if you want, are beginning to grumble about the concessions he's making with the opposition, with the Amharic people, and with the other sort of, further displaced people in Ethiopia. He's been really very, very conciliatory in the past month. He's also been great for women, by the way. He's appointed many, many women to senior positions in government. And that is a refreshing change from previous administration.
Right, I want to touch on another, perhaps the bigger Africa story this week was the passing of the former Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi, dying during a court appearance. A lot of people saying at this stage, rights groups in particular, saying that he died due to negligence by the Egyptian government, which is accused of denying him access to medical attention. How significant a political development is Morsi's passing?
I think it's significant in that it's reignited memories of 2013 and the Arab Spring, if you will. And certainly young people in Ethiopia are mourning him. Pro-democracy activists around the world are mourning him, despite the fact that, he might not have been a great president in the few months that he was in power. He was a democratically elected president. And personages such as Queen Noor of Jordan have actually made this point on social media. There has, of course, also been a long-running rivalry between El-Sisi and Morsi. Sisi is not generally widely liked. Morsi had actually appointed Sisi to his cabinet and had been warned that this was someone who was likely to betray him, which, of course, was what ultimately happened. So there's resentment in the region, there's resentment in Ethiopia itself, and I would say that Mr. Sisi is going to have to watch his back.
And Aisha, how are you reading the somewhat muted reaction from the West to the news of Morsi's passing? Because the likes of the Americans and the UK were at a point criticized for perhaps warming up to the current leader, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who is seen by many as a rights violator himself.
Yes. I think that the the West basically wants to keep the status quo. As you know, Sudan is important not only for its vast oil wealth, but also for things such as gum arabic, which is widely used in the manufacture of soft drinks. It's probably got the monopoly, the world monopoly on gum arabic, and other products that come out of Sudan that are important to global economy, and particularly Western economies. And so many of the Western governments, many of the Western administrations do not want to rock that boat, particularly in view also of the fact that some of their allies in the region, such as Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, are viewing events in Sudan with a great deal of concern, given that if there is a democratically elected transitional movement towards a civilian government, protesters in those countries are going to be fomenting for similar types of change. And that is something that Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and Bahrain are very, very afraid of. And in fact, this military council in Sudan has largely been funded by those countries. And the crackdown that happened 2 weeks ago was, I would assume, at the instinct of some of those leaders.
All right, Asha Kaji, Africa analyst, speaking to us. Thank you.